get everyone out of here on time. So all of you have probably met me or have seen me before, but if you are new here, I am Brooke Lister. I am the registered dietitian on campus. There's also another Brooke, but I work a lot with students as well as faculty and staff doing one-on-one coaching and consultations. I also do a lot of these lunch and learns and other workshops and presentations around campus. And then I also work with all of the nutrition students and are a mentor to them. So I have a lot of different opportunities with my role, but today we'll be talking about food as medicine. And I just want you to raise your hand for those that are in there, or if you're online, like who has heard of food as medicine before? One person here, two. Okay. Yeah, it is a pretty new concept. And we'll talk about everything food as medicine today, the history of it. We'll talk about what it is. We'll also talk about food security because that is a big part of food as medicine is having the access to these good nutritious foods that we're talking about. And for some people, that's not always the case. And then last and probably the biggest part of the presentation is we'll talk about food as medicine within each food group or food category and what choices within those categories are going to fit this food as medicine concept. So this is a roadmap of where we're going today. But first, I just wanted to throw out the statistic that 60% of adults in the US have at least one chronic health condition. And that could be heart disease, that could be diabetes, that could be lots of different things, but a large majority of the people here in the US have a health condition that is often related to diet and other lifestyle factors as well. So that is what is also contributing to the rise of food as medicine is all of these chronic health conditions that are becoming increasingly more popular, more people are being diagnosed, and they're really looking into how can we prevent all of these chronic health conditions from happening. So that's where we get into the topic of food as medicine. Food is definitely something that we can control. It is one of those lifestyle factors that is considered modifiable. So we can take actions to prevent chronic diseases through food or diet. We can also practice good physical activity habits. We can practice getting good sleep. We can practice good stress management. And all of these things help us to live longer, healthier lives. And food is probably the biggest part of that. It's a big part of what we can control. And so I just want to define like healthy eating first. With food as medicine, it's just a general dietary pattern that includes lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of whole grains, lots of lean proteins, and then also limiting food products that are high in like saturated or trans fats, high in added sugar, and also limiting those that are high in sodium as well. So when I talk about healthy eating, that is what I am referring to. So I'll go ahead and jump into the definition of food as medicine first. So I'll just go ahead and read this. Food as medicine is a movement that promotes integrating food and nutrition interventions into our healthcare system. And this movement acknowledges that nutrition plays a crucial role in health and well-being. It encourages innovative and collaborative approaches to addressing many areas of nutrition, including personal and community health. So there's a lot there, but is there any parts of that definition that stand out to you guys? Yeah, there's a lot of words. For me, when I was putting this together, I liked the phrase promotes integrating food and nutrition interventions into healthcare. I feel like that's really like the most basic term of food as medicine. We often think of healthcare and the healthcare system and medicine, drugs, things like that. And really integrating food into those practices really helps to encompass all of that. But it is crucial that we are first just identifying that nutrition does play a role in our health and well-being. along with all of those other things like good sleep, physical activity, like I mentioned before. And we really want to, with food as medicine, look at ourselves internally and personally and see where we can improve and do better, but also as dietitians or other health professionals are looking at this on a larger community scale and thinking what can we do to help communities overall be healthier, because there's a lot we can also learn and improve upon with each other. So food as medicine is a relatively new term. It has been around for a couple decades, but within the last, I would say, probably 1 to 2 years, I've heard about it more, and it's definitely gaining momentum for various reasons. So we kind of talked about 60% of US adults having chronic health conditions. Diet quality is one of those leading risk factors for death related to those chronic health conditions in the US. And like I said, it's probably our biggest modifiable risk factor that we can control. There's also a lot of research being done on the power of food to either treat diseases or reverse diseases, especially we're seeing this with diabetes and heart disease. We're seeing more and more people using food and other diet factors to help prevent, treat, or reverse all of these diseases. And then just recently, last year, the White House had a conference on hunger and nutrition to kind of address this issue of all of these chronic health diseases that are floating around. We all know that diet is a huge factor in our health. And so the Biden-Harris administration, they made committee of people called the National Strategy on Hunger and Nutrition and Health. And these people are essentially working with government agencies, they're working with other community organizations, they're working with local businesses and communities to really get these like key stakeholders that are in like the healthcare systems or work in healthcare related professions to invest in actions to promote healthy eating and promote overall better health and kind of this food as medicine concept. So they're looking for all of these experts to play a larger role in food as medicine. And some medical institutions like hospitals or like outpatient clinics are actually making food like a formal part of treatment. Doctors are actually starting to prescribe like food prescriptions. So like you would get a prescription for like antibiotics or a pill that you needed for whatever health condition that you have. Doctors are actually more and more in conjunction with a dietitian starting to write food prescriptions. So these are the foods that you should be eating. These are the foods that you should be avoiding. There's also companies now that are making like medically tailored meals. So if someone has heart disease, there are companies out there that will ship foods or food products to you that match whatever diet you need to be on. So low sodium or like a diabetes friendly diet. A lot of companies are finding there's a huge market to be had with making these medically tailored meals for people who may just not want to cook the meals and just want something quick and available to be delivered to their homes. But they're finding a lot of success with actually integrating food into part of the healthcare system or part of the disease that they're trying to treat. Any questions so far? No. Okay. So this is just one kind of quote from that conference that stood out, at least to me. So it says, in order to improve diet-related health outcomes, food and nutrition need to be higher priorities in our healthcare system. So rather than just jumping to like drugs or other forms of treatment, we really need to be looking at the factors that we can control and the factors that we can modify, especially diet, to help improve those conditions that we're seeing in our healthcare system. So I thought that was really cool that other people are seeing this as a priority and they're starting to make it more of a priority in the healthcare systems. So next we'll talk about food security. So when I talk about healthy eating, getting fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, we really need to look at food security, especially for food as medicine. because food as medicine relies on the concept that we all have access to all of these foods that we should be eating. And that isn't always the case. There's a lot of factors that go into food security. So we're just going to explore that connection just a little bit more. So food security is defined as a food secure person or household is one that has enough food at all times for an active, healthy lifestyle. And that is just the most very basic definition of food security, but essentially they have access to high quality foods all of the time. And sadly, that is not the case for everyone here in the US. So this was a study done in 2021. So it is a couple years old. I would be interested to see this number now. But almost 90% of households in the US are reporting that they are food secure. So they do have access to those high quality, nutritious foods all of the time. And then there's this little chunk in blue, and there's different types of food insecurity. So there's low food insecurity and then very low food security. Very low food security is like the most concerning level of food security. And we'll talk about the definitions between both. But at about 10% of US households do not have access to nutritious, healthy foods that they should be eating. So with food as medicine, we're really trying to make it so we can address the issue of food security so that all of the people in the US can have access to the foods that will benefit them the most. So low food security is when a person reports reduced quality, variety, or desirability of their diet or the foods that they're able to eat. So maybe they don't have enough money to eat the variety that they want, or they don't have enough money to buy all of the foods maybe that they desire all of the time. So quality, variety, and desirability are kind of all reduced with low food security. And then, like I said, very low food security is kind of the biggest alarming thing that we're trying to address. And usually with very low food security, quality, variety, and desirability are still affected. But people in this category, they have access issues with food, so they don't always have foods available to them that are maybe the healthiest. And there usually is a disruption in their eating patterns, or there's like reduced food intake. So they have to skip meals because they don't have enough money to buy food for a meal. So it's not just like desirability, they just don't have the money to sometimes purchase the foods that they need. So there's a lot of issues with both of these that when working with food as medicine, we're trying to address. And it definitely depends on income, but it can also depend on like where you're living. And there's what's called food deserts, where there's really no access to like healthy, nutritious, especially fruits and vegetables and other foods. It's more of the convenience foods, just quick grab and go foods. So food deserts are also contributing to food security just because people might not have the access to in their region where they live to all of these foods. So just something to keep in mind. People have to have consistent, reliable access to nutritious foods for food as medicine programs to even work. They won't be effective at promoting health or managing or preventing any of these diseases if they can't get consistent and reliable access to food. So just throwing that out there. There are a number of different programs related to food security, and you guys might recognize some of these, and I'll just put them up on the next slide. These are the ones that are pretty common. There's a lot of work being done in this area though, so there are probably a lot of organizations that are not listed on here. SNAP is the biggest, most well-known nutrition assistance program, and it's run through the USDA. You might have heard of this as like food stamps. They typically will have a card, or they sometimes do have food stamps, but most people participating in SNAP actually have like a card that they can scan now at the grocery store, and they get a certain amount of assistance per week. So that's the biggest, most well-known one. Students, like college students, can also be eligible for SNAP too. So that's just one thing I like to throw out there. There's a lot of requirements, but they're pretty lenient, and SNAP can be available for most people. And then WIC is another one. So this is for women, infants, and children up to the age of 5. This is a nutrition assistance program specifically for those low income groups. And it's a really great program. They do provide a lot of like the foods that we've been talking about today. And the National School Lunch Program, if you guys on Zoom in here, if you have kids that go to a public school or even public childcare institutions, most of those follow the National School Lunch Program, which is mainly for kids, but that does also help in providing them at least 1 to 2 nutritious meals a day. Feeding America is also another big one, and this is just a network of food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. So the closest food bank with Feeding America to us is in Salt Lake, but they have a lot of outreach programs as well. So you can go to their food banks and pantries and pick up food. They also have other like educational programs as well. Specifically with older adults, we find that this is one of the populations that are the most food insecure, just because sometimes they're not able to get around very well. They can't go to the grocery store and go shopping. They may be homebound or disabled and not able to go shop for themselves. And if that's the case, we see higher rates of food insecurity. So Meals on Wheels is a great nutrition assistance program for those who are 60 plus years old and do fit in that homebound or disabled category. They typically provide one meal that is nutritious and well balanced, but just keeping that in mind, elderly or older adults are very high risk for food insecurity. And then also, there are a bunch of local food pantries. Logan has one main pantry for people who are experiencing food insecurity. For college students, there's also the snack pantry on campus that you're able to go to once a week and get free food. So there are a couple different options depending on what group you fit in, but food pantries are also great to give you access to those foods that you may not be able to afford as well. Any questions with like food insecurity or how it relates to food as medicine? No. Okay, so we'll jump into the biggest part now, and we'll go through what foods promote this food as medicine concept in all of the groups or categories. If you have any questions though at any time, please feel free to stop me and ask those. With food as medicine though, I just wanted to throw out there that with this concept, we really need to be eating whole foods, not supplementing usually with like vitamins or other supplements. The reason why I say that is because our bodies actually get more vitamins and minerals from the foods that we eat versus supplements. It's able to better like absorb and actually utilize those vitamins and minerals and other things in our foods than it is to take a supplement. Even though supplements are really high in a lot of vitamins and minerals that we need, the absorption with those just isn't as good as eating food as a whole. So when we're talking about the food as medicine concept, we won't be talking about any supplements or anything like that because our body is really good at getting all of the nutrients it needs from food alone. With that being said, if you do have like dietary restrictions or you're super picky, a supplement might be helpful. But for this concept, we really are promoting eating whole foods and not supplementing with anything else. So first we'll go over produce, and this is probably one of the biggest things that I see with a lot of clients that I work with, both students and faculty and staff, is incorporating produce into their diet. So this can be fruits and vegetables. Do any of you feel like you struggle with like fruits and vegetables the most? Yeah, I have some head nods in here. I don't know if anyone online, if you feel like you struggle with this the most, but this is probably the biggest one with a lot of the clients. They're like, how do I get as much produce as I need? So with produce, we do want ideally half of your plate when you're looking at your meals. We want half of that plate to be covered in a color or a produce. So that can be a fruit or a vegetable. You can do both if you're really adventurous, but we want a significant amount of the foods that we're eating at meals coming from a produce or a color. So incorporating just a variety of fruits and vegetables into our diet is the most important thing. If that's the one thing that you remember, please take that point away with produce. We just want to eat a variety. We want to get all of the colors of produce. Each color provides different vitamins and minerals, and we just want to make sure for that reason we're getting a variety so we're not missing out on certain vitamins and minerals that different colors may provide. Produce can be really expensive though, and this is a concern that I get a lot with a lot of clients. One big way to save money is buying and eating what's in season. So, for example, you probably wouldn't want to buy strawberries in November or December. They're not going to be super fresh. They're not going to taste the best. They're not going to be very ripe. Strawberries right now are coming into season. They're more of like a spring, summer fruit. So they're going to taste better. They're going to be less expensive. So really paying attention to seasonal and what is on in the season that you're in. So with winter, we just passed that kind of, not, it might not feel like it with the snow, but a lot of like your hardier fruits and vegetables, like your citrus fruits are going to be more of a winter product. Any of like your potatoes, your squashes also are going to be more of a winter item. Whereas summer and fall, you can see a lot more variety of options. So this is probably the best time to get a variety of produce because there's so many options available to you. So if you're in here and you want to take a picture of this, you totally can. I feel like it's helpful so that way you don't have to Google it every time. If you're online, you can also screenshot it. But I think it's nice to just be educated on what is actually in season and what will be cheaper. Another way to save money on produce is buying frozen or canned produce. This helps to reduce cost. They're also typically easier to prepare as well, so you don't have to spend time cutting them and washing them. They're very much less labor intensive than fresh produce. Yeah. Yeah, so they have similar nutrition profiles to fresh. One could actually argue that frozen fruits and vegetables are actually the healthiest because they're picked at their peak ripeness level. So when they're picked at that peak ripeness, they have the most like vitamins and minerals and nutrition that they're ever going to get. So one could argue frozen actually has more nutrition than like fresh produce. But they all, like when we're comparing them, it's all apples to apples. They're all very similar. So don't hesitate to buy those frozen or canned options. And they do last longer as well. So if you find yourself throwing away a lot of produce that you're not able to go through quick enough, try buying that same, like if you do like throw away strawberries, try buy frozen strawberries instead, as a way to cut down on food waste, but also save cost. One other thing to keep in mind with especially like skin of like fruits or vegetables, a lot of people, especially with like apples, will take the skin off. But just keep in mind with food as medicine, the skin is actually where you can find most of the nutrients in a fruit or a vegetable. So making sure where you can eat the skin when possible. We're not cutting the skin off the apples because a lot of the fiber and other vitamins and minerals are actually found in that skin. So just something to keep in mind to maximize the nutrition that you're getting from these groups. And then steaming, roasting, or microwaving vegetables can help prevent the loss of any vitamins. Some vitamins in these produce items are water soluble. So if we're boiling them, we're losing some of the vitamins in that cooking process. So steaming and roasting can be really great to preserve all of the vitamins that are in there and again help maximize that nutrition quality of the food that you're getting. Any questions with produce? No, pretty straightforward. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we all need to eat more produce. Also, one quick thing to mention, like the darker the color as well, the more nutrients in there. So if we're looking at like lettuce, spinach or kale or even like mixed greens are going to have more nutrition than like an iceberg lettuce. So the darker, deeper, richer color, the more nutrition is going to be in there as well. So just something to keep in mind. But really, we just want to make sure we're eating fruits and vegetables consistently with every meal that we're eating. So these are just some tips for eating more produce. The biggest one for a lot of people, they don't want to like cut and wash their produce. It's time consuming. So some clients have actually, when they get home from the grocery store, they actually like pre-cut and wash all of their produce right away. And then they don't have to worry about prepping it in the days after. So if you're someone that just wants to cut it all up and just be done with it, that's a great way to kind of save yourself a little bit of time in the long run. And it's also great when you want to pull it out of the fridge for like a quick snack or a faster meal. It's already cut and prepared and you don't have to worry about taking that extra step. So if you feel like that's something that could work for you, that is a good option. You can also add a fruit or a vegetable to breakfast to get a serving of produce first thing in the morning. So even just adding like an apple or a banana or an orange to your breakfast, whatever fruit you prefer. Vegetables are a little bit harder, but if you do like omelets or you do like scrambled eggs, adding like some spinach or peppers or things in there to help get that extra serving. Usually lunch and dinner, we're pretty good at adding vegetables. But it's breakfast and like snacks where we usually tend to skip and munch on other things. But just make sure you're getting half of that plate coming from a fruit or a vegetable. Also putting lots of veggies on your sandwiches, adding a side salad to lunch or dinner, aiming for one veggie snack per day. So that could be like carrots and hummus, something as simple as that. That way you're getting that extra serving of vegetables in. Also adding veggies to soups is a great way especially if you have kids, to kind of hide vegetables sometimes, as well as smoothies. If you throw vegetables in there, you can't really taste them, but it's a great way to add extra servings or just have them as part of your meal. You can also snack on dried fruit for a snack. And then just make sure you keep your favorite frozen veggies and fruits on hand so that you can always add them to your meals that you're making or snack on those. And if we don't have them, we're not going to eat them. So it's just important that we always have those options on hand. Okay, we'll get into meat, eggs, and seafood now. And this is probably, besides produce, the second biggest concern that I see with clients that I work with is just getting enough protein and finding cheap sources of protein, because meat, eggs, and seafood can be really expensive nowadays, especially if we're feeding families. But with food as medicine, we just want to make sure we're getting a good mix of animal-based proteins and plant-based proteins. So on the screen, I have a picture of what is animal-based and what is plant-based. If you have any questions on what would fit in either of those categories, you can always ask as well. But with animal proteins, we just want to make sure we're choosing lean cuts of meat and limiting all of our heavily processed meats. So that would be like your sausages, your hot dogs, any like cold cuts of meat, any salami, ham, bacon, things like that, that food manufacturers are often adding a lot of sodium and other things to. We just want to make sure that we're limiting those as much as possible, and then choosing leaner cuts of meat like chicken without the skin on. You can also do turkey, you can do fish. Preferably if you're doing ground beef, they recommend like 93-7 blend or like an 80-20 blend, but just trying to get that hamburger as lean as possible. If you're doing like steaks or pork chops, just cutting off the fat and eating just the lean part of the meat, but really just emphasizing those lean animal proteins. And then Trying to incorporate seafood, the current recommendation is about twice per week. That's really hard around here just because seafood is typically not fresh and it's really expensive. Some grocery stores will have frozen fish options, which is a great way to still incorporate fish, or you can also do canned options as well. Just make sure with those canned options you're getting low sodium options, so you're not getting all of the sodium in there. But fish is also great. And then eggs are typically budget friendly. They're not super budget friendly right now, but hopefully that will change. And they're a good source of protein as well. So we just want to get, again, that good mix of animal and plant proteins. And the nice thing with plant proteins is they're often less expensive than animal proteins. So if we're getting that good mixture of both, that's a great way to save a little bit of money on our food budget as well. And with food as medicine, plant proteins, animal proteins just have different things to offer us. So that's why we're trying to get that good mixture. So we want to make sure we're eating both, but we definitely do want that balance. Any questions with meat, seafood, eggs, fish? No. Okay. We'll move on to dairy and non-dairy products right now. So we want about 3 servings of dairy per day. That does not have to be like milk to drink. It can be, but it can also be adding like cheese and yogurt to things as well. And the key nutrients that dairy provides is protein, calcium, and vitamin D. Protein's good for a lot of things. It's good for helping keep our muscles healthy. Protein is also good for like our skin, our eyes, our hair. It also helps promote functioning of just all of our inside body processes. And then calcium and vitamin D are super important for bone health. So if you're someone who is at risk for like osteoporosis or like thinning of bones, dairy is super important to make sure you're getting enough of, because again, dairy as a whole, it provides all of those great nutrients that we need to keep our bones healthy. Supplements, like I said, are also fine, but you're going to get more of a benefit from getting that food as a whole rather than that supplement. And dairy is a great way to get protein, calcium, and vitamin D. Greek yogurt is also another great dairy option, and it is also a good source of probiotics, which are also another really hot topic in nutrition right now. So probiotics are really good for like gut health. There's a lot of research coming out too that what we eat and the bacteria in our gut affects a large amount of our body more than just our gut. So they're looking into how like our gut is connected to like our mental health and our brain health. They're looking into how the bacteria in our gut affect like Alzheimer's disease, dementia, but also what we eat in our gut health affects our heart, our lungs, just our internal health and our body processes, and also our chronic diseases that we may develop. So probiotics are really important, and Greek yogurt is probably the easiest way to get a good source of probiotics in your day. Cheese is also a great option for dairy. Butter versus margarine, just cooking with, typically we want less of those like animal fats in the cooking process. So we do want to cook with more oils. So like avocado oil, olive oil, canola, or vegetable oil. We typically want to stay away from butters and other solid fats like margarine. One thing with like butter though is it is not as processed or as man-made as margarine. So when we're looking at different options, we usually prefer butter over margarine if you are cooking with a solid fat, just because butter is, again, less processed. There's a lot less chemicals added to it, and you are getting the benefits from like dairy that you're not necessarily getting with margarine. And then if you are like lactose intolerant or you can't tolerate milk products very well, dairy alternatives can be a great replacement for milk. So soy milk is actually the most comparable to cow's milk. So if you're wanting a very similar nutrition profile, you're going to want to go with soy milk, but there's also lots of other options out there now. There's almond milk, there's oat milk, there's rice milk. There's lots of different options, but we just want to make sure that we're getting dairy as much as possible and getting a good source of milk as well, again, for those calcium and vitamin D. But you can also get calcium and vitamin D from broccoli. You can get it from beans. You can get it from almonds, tofu. Usually orange juice is now fortified with calcium and vitamin D to kind of make it similar to milk in that nutrition content, and then also leafy green vegetables. So there are other ways to get calcium and vitamin D. You'll just have to incorporate a little bit more variety into your diet and make sure you're getting a good balance, especially of those leafy green vegetables and those plant-based proteins to get those two nutrients. Any questions with dairy or non-dairy? Okay. So next we'll go into frozen foods, and this isn't really a food category, but I like to throw it in there because a lot of us do sometimes rely on frozen foods or frozen meals to get us through the day. We don't always have time to maybe prepare a lunch or prepare a dinner. Quick on-the-go lifestyles can make cooking kind of difficult at times. So with frozen foods, we just want to highlight frozen produce can be cheaper, like we talked about with fruits and vegetables, and it's just as nutritious. So really highlighting those options as great options. If you want to cut down on like food cost and just make produce easier, any frozen produce is great. Frozen meals are also helpful, but they can be pretty expensive. Usually you can get a bigger bang for your buck just making a meal at home and preparing it rather than buying frozen options. But if you are someone who does rely on frozen meals, you just want to make sure to read the ingredients on a lot of these frozen meals and try and find frozen products that are minimally processed. They're all going to be processed to some extent, but there are certain brands that have less additives than others. And I've highlighted a couple of these brands up here that have fewer food additives and are a little bit more healthy and not as processed. So the Amy's brand is usually a pretty good one. The Healthy Choice Simply line is also usually a pretty good choice. And then the Lean Cuisine in like the orange boxes are actually like reviewed by the American Heart Association. So they're like low in sodium and other additives that can be harmful to like heart health. So these are 3 brands if you do find yourself picking frozen food options. These are good ones to turn to, but like I said, just read the nutrition label and just try and find products that are minimally processed and do have less ingredients. And then frozen fish and meat also can be part of a healthy diet. So if you buy frozen chicken or frozen hamburgers, those are also great options. And usually frozen meats are less expensive than fresh meats. So don't be afraid to incorporate those frozen options as well. Okay. Next we'll go on to like just soups and canned goods. With anything that's canned, we just want to make sure we're choosing low sodium options. So specifically like veggies, any beans, if you do any like canned soup options, just making sure those are as low sodium as possible. So usually on the front of the label, it will say like 30% less sodium or lower sodium options, something to that extent of low sodium. So just making sure when you are grocery shopping that you are picking the low sodium option for those. You can also, if you can't find a low sodium option, like if you were doing like black beans or something, you can buy the regular black bean can. Just make sure you're rinsing those and draining off that liquid. And that also helps to get rid of the sodium that's in there. You can also do that with low sodium and get rid of even more sodium that's in there. With fruit, just making sure if you are choosing canned fruit, try and get it canned in its own fruit juice rather than a heavy syrup, just because there's a lot of sugar added in there. Not that anyone probably eats or drinks the syrup, but we just want to make sure that we're not adding more sugars than needed to products. So getting those in their juice is great. Canned bean options are quick, easy to prepare protein option. So even though they are one of those maybe more like canned or convenience foods, they're great because they have a lot of fiber, a lot of vitamins and minerals, and we can add them to like tacos or soups are a great way to add beans, salads. There's a lot of different ideas there, but utilizing those as a good option. And then sodium is, like I said, the main thing that we're looking for with canned foods. So one way to also tell is looking at the percent daily value on the side. You ideally want sodium to be 5 to 10% if you're looking at the nutrition label. Anything that's 20% or higher on that side is considered a high source of sodium. So you probably would want to see if you could find a lower sodium option, but just making sure we're not adding extra salt to our diets. Okay, bread and bakery items are next. So whole grains and fiber are the most important things to consider with carbs or starches. And fiber really does help with a lot of different things. It can help with high cholesterol. It can help with heart health. It also helps to keep our digestive system healthy. So if we're not having fiber, we can have issues with like bowel movements, things like that. And then fiber also helps to keep us fuller longer. So if we're not having fiber, we can feel hungry pretty frequently. So there are a lot of benefits with fiber, and that's why we want to make a lot of the grains, or at least half of the grains that we eat, whole grain. So this would be like brown rices, any like whole wheat pasta. There's also pastas now made out of like lentils or beans, which are also higher in protein and higher in fiber. So those are other great options. And then quinoa is another good one, oatmeal, popcorn. And then if you are doing like bread products, any like whole wheat, like tortilla, rolls, bread, anything like that. We just want to be whole grain as much as possible. We talked about the benefits of fiber. Whole grains also have more vitamins and minerals because they're not as processed as our more refined options, like our white breads, things like that. And then fiber, we typically want to aim for about 14 grams of fiber per like 1,000 calories. So if you are aiming for like 2,000 calories a day, you would want about 28 grams of fiber. So probably a lot more than we think we need. And there is a statistic that only 5% of people in the US actually meet the daily recommended amount of fiber. So 95% of us are not getting enough fiber. So that's something that we can all work on. And fiber definitely does help with that food as medicine concept as well. So just something to be aware of. Fiber is also found in your fruits and vegetables as well. So that's another reason why they're in a large part of the plate. And then to tell if something is whole wheat and whole grain, especially with like bread products, I just wanted to point this out. You're going to want to look at the fiber. Typically, if it's truly whole wheat, it should have like 3 grams or more of fiber, and it should have a decent amount of protein because our whole grains also have a lot of protein in there. This one is probably not the best whole grain product, but another key that will kind of clue you in if it's whole grain, it will say whole wheat flour or whole grain flour. Sometimes water will be the first ingredient, which is fine. You just want this whole wheat flour to be the first or the second ingredient. If it's lower down on the list, it's probably not whole grain, and they've just added coloring to make it look like it is. So look for that whole wheat to be first or second in the ingredients list, or you can look at the dietary fiber. Typically, we want that to be 3 grams or more, and that would be considered a good source of fiber. And then breakfast cereals and snacks. So a lot of these types of foods can be high in added sugar. So we just want to make sure with any cereals, snacky foods, that we are, again, choosing those that are higher in fiber and lower in added sugar. With this group, added sugars, like I said, is the main concern. And they actually just redid a lot of the food labels, and they now have to include the percent of added sugar that they're adding to the product. So this is also really helpful in telling you like what's the better option. So I just put 2 cereals up here for fun. This is Honey Bunches of Oats on the left, and on the right is like a Post Great Grains cereal. You can see like they're both pretty similar in nutrition content, but the biggest thing with like this one that stands out is there's only like 9% added sugars in there, whereas like Honey Bunches of Oats, they're adding a lot more sugar to that. With breakfast cereals, that's usually the biggest thing that I watch for is just how much sugar are they adding. But also other things to look at would be again that protein. You're getting more protein with the post great grains. It is a little bit lower of a serving size and it is more calories, but it is probably a more nutrient dense option than the Honey Bunches of Oats. So just comparing different brands for the best option. And sugar can be in a lot of different forms. So it can be any of those names that end in oaths. That's usually a good way to tell if there's sugar in there. But added sugars can also be honey or fruit juice or other natural flavorings. It's just anything that they're adding. And unfortunately, they don't tell you like how much is honey and how much is like white sugar. So just make sure that that number on the side is again that 5 to 10% range for added sugars. And then beverages is one of the last things that we'll cover. We'll go over any condiments, sauces, recommendations, and then I have a quick website that I'll show you, and then we'll end the presentation. But beverages, the biggest thing here is we just want to prioritize drinking water. All other beverages that we consume throughout the day should be in addition to water. And I really like this graphic because it kind of puts it in kind of something similar to the food pyramid. So water's at the bottom. We should be drinking mostly water. As we work our way up to the top, the things at the top we should be drinking the least amount of. So you can see calorie sweetened beverages without nutrients. That would be like sodas, energy drinks, things like that. Calorie beverages with some nutrients would be like alcohol or beer or wine. Fruit juices could also be thrown in there. But low fat milk is great. Tea or coffee, typically we want that unsweetened and not adding a lot of cream, sugar, things like that to our coffee and our tea. This is still a great option. But we definitely want to limit those more processed beverages, especially those sugary beverages where a lot of sugar is added and we're not really getting any other nutrients from that. And then just making sure we're staying hydrated. Sparkling water, if you are a soda drinker, is a great way to help transition away from soda. It is water based, so you're getting more hydration than you are with a soda. And it does have like that fizzy sweet taste sometimes. So that's also a great way to just increase that water a little bit. If you feel like I can't give up soda completely, trying to do like half and half and slowly transition away from soda. And then if you're also a person who doesn't like the taste of water, water enhancers like Crystal Light or Mio are great options if you need like a sweet flavor. Or you can also use fruit to flavor your water. It won't be as sweet as those water enhancers, but it will still give you a little bit of a different taste than just plain water. So those are just some good like beverage recommendations, but we just mainly want to make sure we are staying hydrated appropriately and prioritizing water. And then the last category is any condiments, sauces. So like I mentioned, we really want to be cooking mostly with oils over any solid fats like butter. All oils have a combination of unsaturated, and unsaturated fats are like the good fats. We want to be consuming mostly unsaturated fats. And then we also do want to have some saturated fats in there. But oils will have a good combination of both. But oils that are highest in the healthy fats are olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, safflower, sesame, peanut oil, and soybean oil. One thing with coconut oil, a lot of people use this. It was kind of a craze a couple years ago, but it is mostly a saturated fat, and saturated fats are kind of our unhealthier fat options. So coconut oil, is okay to use once in a while, but I wouldn't go cooking with coconut oil all of the time. It can add a great flavor to things, especially like stir fries. Some people will use it in baked goods, but it is kind of more towards that unhealthier fat end. So we don't want to cook with coconut oil all of the time. And then just flavor foods with herbs and spices instead of salt. Again, not adding a lot of extra salt to the foods that we're cooking, and flavoring with like honey, hot sauce, any like herbs, lemon juice, things like that, where you're not adding a lot of salt to that. And then with condiments, this goes for like any dressings, sauces, gravies, all of that. We just want to make sure we're using those sparingly. We want to make sure that our food is not swimming in condiments or sauces. So asking, especially if you go out to eat, if you can have the sauce on the side, because a lot of times they put way more condiments or sauces than we need. And also just picking better options with condiments and sauces. So hummus is a great option. I know people love hot sauce. That's also a great option. Guacamole, doing like Greek yogurt instead of sour cream, then you're getting a little bit more protein. So there's definitely ways to make sauces and condiments healthier, but we do want to use those to enhance the flavor and not necessarily drench our food in condiments and sauces. Okay, any questions on like any of the food groups related to like food as medicine? Yeah.
There's one place on the chat. Is it possible to eat with fiber?
Yes, probably. If you are having like diarrhea, that might be a clue that you're eating too much fiber. If your like bowel movements are not regular and you're having like diarrhea all the time. But yeah, you can eat too much fiber, but it's really hard to eat too much. Sorry, that was a little personal, but that is one way to tell if you're eating too much fiber. Okay. Any other questions in here? No. Okay. So this website, I'll just show you really fast, is a great way to kind of help with diet and help choose like what foods to pick. We went through a lot today, and this website actually, they're doing a lot with food as medicine right now. They're one of the leaders in kind of reaching consumers and kind of putting together like a more intuitive way to tell if the foods that we're eating are actually good for us or not. So there's an online website. It's called Sifter Shop. Um, there's also an app too, which I feel like the app is a little bit more intuitive as well. With the app, you can actually download it. And if you're like in the grocery store and you're trying to determine like what's a healthier option on a food product, you can actually scan the barcode and it will tell you like this is a healthy option. This is maybe not the healthiest option. So that barcode scanner is really nice too if you just want to have help with a quick decision in the grocery store. But you can go in, you do have to create a profile. You can pick like which diet you want to follow, and there's a lot of different diets on here. And there's like sodium reducing, if you're vegan, vegetarian, gluten free, if you want to follow like a Mediterranean diet, if you're trying to work on eating more organic foods, there's lots of different diet options that you can choose. Also, if you have any like food allergies or intolerances, you can pick like, I don't want gluten or I don't want dairy, which is really nice. And then you can also pick like, I know my bone health isn't maybe the greatest, so I want to eat more calcium and more vitamin D. You can select those. There's also religious restrictions on there. If you do have like a certain health diagnosis, you can check those. You can check any medications that you're on, and this will kind of pull all of the recommendations in and give you foods that would work for you on the things that you've selected. And then you can actually choose like which store you shop at. The hard thing is they don't have like local grocery stores like Macy's or Lee's. Winco's not on here either. There was like Walmart and Smith's though. So if you do shop at either of those stores, You can actually go in once you put in your preferences and you can make a shopping list for yourself. So you can go through and it will give you food options. So I have Walmart selected. So these are foods that are available at our local Walmart. So you can choose which store you're shopping at that would fit within the parameters that you selected. You can also do what's called recipe sifter. So on my profile, I picked that I wanted to follow a Mediterranean diet. So that's what my parameter is in there. So say I'm searching online and I want some fun new Mediterranean diet recipes. So you can actually take links from online and put them in here, and it will tell you if it matches with your preferences or not. So you can go in, you can copy and paste the link into here, and then you'll just hit sift this recipe, and it will pull like all of the nutrition from that recipe, and it will actually make a grocery list for you based on that recipe. So this is a pretty good one. The question mark either means it doesn't fit or they're not sure if your retailer has that product. But all of like this one has most of those. So I could go through, and if I wanted to make this Greek salad, I could just hit add to list and add all of these ingredients to my list. And then it's going to be over here in my shopping list on the side. And then if you do like take your phone to the grocery store, you can open your app, pull it up, and your list is already there. So that's one really nice thing is you can copy and paste recipes in here. It will tell you if like the ingredients match with what you chose or not. And then you can also make your grocery list with just a couple clicks, which is really nice. This is free. Yep. And the app is also free, and they have it for both like Android and Apple. So it's really nice. It kind of takes like the grocery list part of things out as well, and is really quick and easy. And you can make a grocery list in 5 to 10 minutes or less, depending on how fast and how many recipes you add in here. But that's one really nice thing. And like I said, this website and this company specifically is doing a lot of work with food as medicine. So it's a pretty good resource. And they also have like blog posts and recipes in this help hub. So if you're interested in ever like learning more about certain things, they have a lot of resources on here as well. So I just wanted to show you that really quick, and then just end with food is just one part of the equation to better health. So it's probably not going to solve all of our issues or all of our problems. Unfortunately, it's not also the only thing that contributes to our health. So we need to do a lot of other health promoting practices as well. But one thing that we can control is food, and we can control the quality and the nutrition of the foods that go into our body. So we just want to make sure to prevent chronic diseases that we're maximizing the nutrition that we're getting. And that's really the underlying component of food as medicine. We want to have those health promoting foods so that we're able to live longer, more healthier lifestyles. Any questions either online or in here about anything that we've talked about related to food as medicine today?